Well, good morning. Happy summer, everybody. It is officially here. And this means that I don't have to wake up at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning and get everybody to school. I don't have to pack school lunches tomorrow. And, man, what else don't I have to do? I don't have to answer robocalls at 5:15 in the afternoon every day. Thank you. And actually, the reality is I've only ever done like one of those three things. Tiffany did all the rest of that, but that's okay. We're excited to be in summer. We're excited to be here, and it's going to be a great time to gather together, kind of circle the wagons in your family, but then also here at church, we're really looking forward to being able to spend some more time together and some fun things that we've got planned. And in fact, in 2 weeks from today, we're going to be celebrating our summer kickoff. We've done this every year since we've opened the church, and it's just been a blast. We do it after service, so it'll be immediately following that 10 o'clock service, and we're going to have all kinds of things. We have some lunch. We're going to grill some hamburgers, some hot dogs. Don't want to overpromise. We're going to grill some hot dogs. We got some snacks and popcorn, all kinds of fun things, as well as some inflatables for your kids and cornhole for everybody. We're going to have a great time, and it's going to be awesome. And it's going to follow our summer hours 10 o'clock service, so don't miss that. And starting next week, we're going to be meeting here at 10 o'clock, and we're going to do that from June 2nd all the way through August 11th. We recognize that we couldn't do this in the school year. It's impossible for us to do that and serve our kids the way that we want to. But during summer, we see we can condense that down, and we can serve everybody quite well and have a great time along the way. And as Kevin alluded, we're looking forward to doing some things as well that we are only able to do when we have one service. And so that'll be some stuff after service and stuff like that. So we're looking forward to that. Now, I've got to be totally honest with you guys, and it may be obvious to some of you. And that's when we made the decision to go to one service, starting next week, summer hours, all this stuff. In my head, I was like, oh no, what are people going to think of me as a leader, right? Like, what are they going to think about me if we expanded to 2 services and we needed to, and it's been incredible, and we've seen the church grow, and now we're going back to one service. Like, what are people going to say, right? Like, what are they going to say about me? What are they going to say about our church? And I was kind of concerned about that, what other people would think. And sometimes what people say impacts what you and I decide because of the fear that we have. And this happens all the time to people, right? You get worried about making a career decision. And in your decision-making process, part of what you're thinking is, well, what is everybody else going to think if I were to do that? In fact, I was talking to somebody this week, and they were saying how when they were in college, while they were studying in their track, getting ready to graduate with their degree, they wanted to switch majors. They wanted to become a teacher. And then every teacher in the room was like, what are you talking about? But because they were afraid of what other people would say, they just kept going. They stayed in that track. And so some people, in your career, you're like, man, I want to do something, but I'm afraid of what everybody else says. Sometimes maybe you want to make a family decision. And your family decision is like, maybe we need to pull out of soccer, or we need to pull out of lacrosse. And yet you're afraid, like, well, what are all the other soccer moms or soccer dads or lacrosse moms going to say about us if we were to stop? Maybe you're going to couples counseling, and you're like, if anybody were to ever find out that we went to counseling, what would they possibly say? See, the reality is that many of us, we see things with our eyes, and then we filter it through, like, you're like, figure out, I wonder what it could be. And then you start saying things with your mouth. And so what you've seen with your eyes, you start saying with your mouth, and you don't know all of the facts. In fact, there are 4 pastors that were getting together. They got together pretty regularly for lunch. And it's like kind of like what I do here in Sarasota. We get together with area pastors and have lunch and encourage one another. And these guys, they got together, and one day they were like, you know what? Life is hard enough being a pastor. Like, we really need to serve one another. We need to be encouraging one another and supporting one another. And the one guy goes, all right, well, I think we should share with one another, like, what we struggle with. And the first guy goes, well, okay, so I really struggle with gambling. And he starts telling a story about how he's really just can't give up this gambling addiction. And the second pastor looks at him and goes, man, I wish I had that problem. I just can't stop drinking. Like, it's not just one drink for me. It turns into 2 and 3 and 4, and then it's just bad news. And the third guy said, yeah, that's really tough, but I'm afraid, like, I don't know how to stop this. Like, I'm attracted to another woman that's not my wife. And the last pastor looks at them all and he goes, man, you guys are messed up. Like, I'm not that bad. Like, I just have a problem keeping secrets. Like, and everybody else was like, oh no. And see, this is a little bit of what you and I do. Like, we talk about, like, we think about gossip and we're like, it's not that bad, right? Like, just talking about somebody else, it's really not that bad, right? And yet it really is a problem. It really is something that we need to be incredibly careful with. Like, some of you would say, well, I've got a rule of thumb when it comes to gossip. And you'll say things like, I only ever say good things about my neighbors. And this one's really good. Right? Like, you kind of lean in or I will never repeat gossip, so listen carefully. And so you'd say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to gossip. Or you kind of put all these rules and clarifications around why you say what you say and when you say what you say and why you can say what you say. And sometimes it's like we want to just be like, but it's true. It's true. Like, it happened. I watched it. Well, just because something is true doesn't mean it's something that needs to be said. We said that last week, that everything that is said must be true, but not everything true must be said. And that is like a reality that sometimes we just need to stop talking. Gossip has this incredible ability to take root in our hearts and can be problematic, which is why Jesus said 10 little words that impact every word that you and I say. Look at this. You probably have it memorized, but Matthew chapter 12, verse 34, we've looked at it every single week in this series. Jesus says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what's going on in your heart comes up and pours out of your mouth. And this entire series, while, yeah, it's been, kind of surfacey and about certain little things, but man, it's anything but that, because Jesus says in his own words that everything that we've talked about, lying, complaining, criticizing, gossiping, is an overflow of what's happening inside of your heart. And Jesus, from the very beginning, has always been concerned more with your heart than your behavior. It's more about relationship than it is about religion, which is why you and I must talk about gossip. Even if we want to minimize it, we want to say, oh, it's no big deal. It's kind of just like a little thing. No. This little thing has the ability to impact so many people in such a big way. So turn with me in your Bibles. There's Bibles on the chairs around you to Proverbs chapter 18, verses 6 through 8. That's page 444 in your Bibles there, or you can click over in your YouVersion app. And if you've been reading along with us in our STEP reading plan, that's our monthly reading plan that we hand out every single month. You started reading Proverbs this week. Proverbs is an incredible book. It is so practical. Like, if you're just looking and you're like, I don't think the Bible matters and it's irrelevant and all this stuff, start reading Proverbs. It's going to make your life better and make you better at life for sure. But Proverbs, I also recognize, it's like, Solomon, who wrote the book of Proverbs, he's kind of jumping around in like topic to topic, and then there's this thought over here, and then the very next verse it's talking about something different. It's a little bit like sitting down with your grandfather, and he's saying, now don't forget about this, and then instantly he's like, don't forget about this, and you're like, wait, we're just talking about money over here, and now you're talking about like my heart and my mind. Like, okay. And that's the way that the book of Proverbs goes. And so you'll see today that we start in Proverbs 18, but then we skip several verses ahead, and it's all the same idea. Solomon is writing about the same things. Well, here in chapter 18, we see Solomon, the author of Proverbs, and he says this about our words. He says, the lips of fools bring them strife, and their mouths invite a beating. You guys realize that this is the word of God, the most practical word. This is incredible, that your mouths are writing a check that can't be cashed. Like, your mouth is inviting a beatdown because of some of the things that you've said. It's like fourth grade all over again, right? Like, this is getting yourself into trouble because of the words that you're saying. He goes on in verse 7, he says, the mouths of fools or foolish people are their undoing, and their lips are a snare to their very lives. Your mouth, my mouth, the words that come out can unravel your life. And here in verse 8, we see this. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down into the inmost parts. See, Solomon, when he's thinking of inmost parts, he's thinking of these words are going down into the very core of your soul. That they go down into your heart, that center of your being. How many of you like peanut M&Ms? Any peanut M&M lovers in the room? Okay, a lot of people. Any peanut butter M&Ms, right? Let's talk about that for a second. That's like, it's a little slice of heaven right there. A little morsel. And have you ever tried to just eat like a few M&Ms? You're like, I'm going to be good. I'm not going to. No, and you keep reaching for a few more, and you just keep popping M&Ms in. And then before you know it, you're like ripping the entire bag open. Like, where did they all go? In your stomach, right? Like, this is where they went. And this is exactly what Solomon says about gossip. He's like, it's just a little bit here, a little bit there, and then before you know it, you can't stop because it is so tasty. And when gossip gets inside of you, it can hurt you. It's not just about the things that come out of you that are problematic. It's that gossip, it works its way into you, down into your heart, and it becomes a problem. See, you start with just a little bit, like an update, right? Like, hey, did you hear about? Or I don't know if you're aware, but, the neighbor's over here. And if we want to churchify this and kind of make it a little bit real, hey, if you could be praying for them, this is what's going on. And we turn it into a prayer request. When it's not actually a prayer request, it's just sharing gossip about somebody else. And you start telling stories, right? And that one might sting a little bit, but every now and then a little pain helps. But if you're a kid, you remember when you were a kid, your mom would sing the song, right? Like, oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. And then the next one was always, oh, be careful, little ears, what you hear. And I used to be like, why do I need to be aware, like careful what my ears hear? How does that even remotely impact me? Well, Proverbs tells us that what we hear works its way into our heart. And what's in our heart, Jesus says, works its way out of our mouth and impacts the world around us. So yeah, one of the very first things that you and I need to do is we need to protect our ears. This past week when I was working on this message, it was so funny. Tiffany, some days I work really, really well in the office and I can get tons of work done. But then there's other days I know that like my ADD is like just going off or something like that. And I'm like, I need to go someplace where I'm not going to see anybody and I can just hunker down, put headphones on and just start writing and studying. And so I go down, I find a Starbucks down on 41. And sure enough, as soon as I walk in, I'm like, I'll know nobody. As soon as I walk in, I'm like, hey, good to see you. And I'm like, oh, there's the barista I know. And so anyway, it was about lunchtime, and Tiffany says, I got to make a run to Costco, and so I don't know what you're doing for lunch. And I go, hey, let's meet for lunch. I'd love to take you out on a date for lunch, and that'd be great. I'm in a good spot where I can take a break right now. And she's like, all right, no problem. And so I was like, listen, how about we meet at the Costco food court? And it'd be great. And so I being the very generous husband that I am, I looked at her and I said, hey, babe, like, listen, anything you want on this menu, you can have. All right? Like, it is all yours, whatever you would like. And then I walked up to the counter and I'm like, I'll have 2 hot dogs, 2 Cokes, and a slice of pepperoni pizza. And I gave him my $5.35 and I walked back to the table. And as I was sitting at the table, across from my lovely wife, enjoying food, I think, and I was eating this hot dog, and I'm like, this isn't going to go well later. Like, I just know that this hot dog is going to make me feel sick later. And so I was like, you know what? The next right thing to do is just wash it down with Coke and a pepperoni pizza. Like, just slop that thing right in there and jam it down and everything will be fine, right? Why is it that we eat things that we know are going to hurt our bodies? We eat things or we put things in our mouth. We drink things. We take things that we know at the end of eating it, consuming it, we're going to be like, oh, my stomach. Like, what happened? You ate it, dummy. Like, you ate the entire bag of M&Ms. You scarfed them down. And it's no wonder that when something that seems as innocent as gossip, we just start consuming. And then all of a sudden, we find ourselves being like, oh, man, I've got a heartache. I've got, like, problems in all of my relationships. Proverbs 16, verse 28 says that a gossip separates close friends. This is just the same as eating a hot dog, slamming a piece of pizza and washing it down with a Coke. Like, it's going to hurt. It's not going to be healthy for you. And there will be consequences that happen. And see, if we know these things are true, it seems to me to be pretty wise that you and I would protect our ears. That when we get in situations where we're prone to gossip, where gossip is happening, that we remove ourselves from the situation or just, change the topic or whatever it may be to get out of what's going in us. Gossip plants suspicion in your heart. It has the incredible potential to bring great damage to your life. Towards the end of chapter 18, Solomon says this in verse 21. He says that the tongue has the power of life and death. That your words, this very small part of your body, I know it's complex, I know it has all kinds of muscles in it, but it is so small in size and rarely seen. Like, I don't walk around like with my tongue hanging out of my mouth. Like, no, we don't see each other's tongues, and yet we see the repercussions of it. We see the consequences of it. We see this wake of hurt and pain that can be left behind from our tongues. And see, gossip very often will feel powerless because it's usually whispered. It's usually whispered in a quiet, hey, I don't know if you know, but, or did you hear this? Man, it's the craziest thing. My neighbors. And yet, something whispered, it brings and comes to life in a way that you never could have imagined. It's the difference between a butcher and a surgeon. They're both doing the same task. They're slicing into some piece of meat, and yet one brings great destruction, and then the other brings great healing. Words can both hurt and heal in the same manner. My sophomore year of college, I transferred into a small Christian college. It was called Philadelphia Biblical University, and I knew nobody going into this school, and so that summer I was working as a junior high youth pastor, and the senior high youth pastor, the guy that I reported to, his sister-in-law was here for the summer, and she was going to be going to the very same school. And so we kind of were hanging out a good bit, and we went on a couple dates, and things. It was okay. And so we showed up on the very first day of school, and this is cool, right? And then it wasn't but like 2 weeks in where I was like, oh, there's like a lot more options here than just this one person. And so I was like, very kindly, I said, hey, thank you so much. Like, this has been great. But like, we're going to go separate ways, right? And so then it wasn't like, not too long after that I found somebody else. And I was like, hey, we should hang out. And we started dating, and we dated for about 2 months or so. And, at Christian colleges, I don't know if any of you went to a Christian college. You don't need to raise your hand, but I feel you. I understand. And there's like this subculture there, and part of that subculture is like, if there's no ring by spring, it ain't no thing, okay? So like, the idea is like, you're getting engaged, whether you know it or not, and so spring is coming. I'm seeing spring like come closer and closer, and I was like, no. This is not happening. And so I said to this young lady, hey, this is never going to happen. And I think I might have even said those words. And it was awful. It was terrible. And so what I didn't know was that her sister was an RA at the school. And so her sister, they start finding out about this, and all this nonsense happens. And then I find out that the RAs all got together, had a meeting about Peter Gawesky, and how you need to be careful because Peter Gawesky is a heartbreaker, right? And so I meet another woman, and I'm like, yeah, that's the one. Ring by spring, no problem. And so I start talking with Tiffany Arthur, and so she's like, we are not dating. No, you're gonna have to wait like forever. Thank you very much before we even go on our first date. But what happened was we became best friends, like the very best friends. And if I can give anybody advice, like, be best friends with the person that you're dating or potentially marrying. And so we were just best friends. And while we were not even dating, some of the RAs came to her one night and they said, hey, listen, we've all talked, and we don't think that it's a good idea for you to date Peter. Well, just going on record, it's been 15 years happily married. Thank you very much. See you later, RAs from PBU. But the point is this, like, she came to me and she was like, I don't even really know what to do with this. Like, I can't imagine what she had to think about and bringing that awkward conversation to me, but she brought it up to me, and I probably tried to act tough and cool and like, whatever, it didn't hurt. I don't know that there have been many things that have been said about me that hurt a little bit more than that. Because being brand new to a place, not knowing anybody, nobody knowing me really, and they're making accusations about me, and like they're talking about my character and my who I am as a person, and telling that to other people, like, you shouldn't be with him, you shouldn't even talk to him, like, don't, come on, like, that was so hurtful. And yet, to them, it probably was just like, oh, this is just some words. This is just some conversation. And the reality is this, is that you and I, if we're going to give gossip the gag order, we're going to have to filter our mouths. Not only are we going to have to protect our ears, but the second thing we got to do is we have to filter our mouths. Not everything that you say needs to come out. Like, there are things that we just need to not say, not do. What's one of the first things that a surgeon does before they ever enter into the operating room, before they ever pick up a tool? One of the very first things that they do, at least in like ER and Grey's Anatomy and whatever, they put a mask on, right? Like, they put a mask over their mouth. Not because they're afraid of what they're going to be inhaling. It's because they know what they're exhaling. They know that the germs that are in their mouth could potentially harm the individual that's laying on their OR table. And so they cover that. They filter their mouth. And you and I, we need to do the very same thing. Because when somebody last talked about you, when somebody last said something about you, you know it hurt. You know it stung. And we need to filter that. In fact, Proverbs 21 says that we should watch our tongue. We should filter our tongue. And at times, keep your mouth shut. We tell this to kids all the time. I now have the opportunity to tell it to a bunch of adults. And you will what? Stay out of trouble. Like, if you don't want to get into trouble, just don't say it. Sometimes we just need to not say something. Don't invent things with your small mind and then blab it out with your big fat mouth. There are times when you and I just need to be quiet. Last week we were looking at what the Apostle Paul said to the Ephesian church in chapter 4. And today we're going to finish that chapter. We're going to complete that chapter. And so I want you to look at the screen behind me or the side screens here at what Paul says about how to use our language. He says, don't let any unwholesome talk or don't let any gossip come out of your mouths, but only what's helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Because what does gossip do? Very often, gossip says, I've got a need. I need to feel better about myself. I need to feel stronger. I need to feel more important. I need to feel something. And so then we have to share another thing in order to build myself up. And yet Paul says, no. Use your language in a way that builds others up and that it may benefit those who listen to you. See, gossip often happens because we have an unhealthy desire to be better than someone else. Gossip says that I'm stronger because you're weaker. That's what gossip believes. But the gospel says that when I'm weak, he's strong. And when I'm weak, it allows God to be put on display. And so gossip messes it all up and it distorts the gospel, the good news of Jesus. Which is why Paul says, listen, if you're going to follow Christ, use your language in an appropriate way. Meet their needs. And here at Hope City, I'm excited to share with you an opportunity that we have to do exactly that right here at Tatum Ridge, in fact. You know, from the beginning of our church, we have said that we want to be for the next generation. We want to be for Sarasota, that this is who we are. This is what our heart beats for. We believe that following Jesus is the greatest thing that you could do with your life. And we want to help people take their next steps in their journey of faith. And so we've partnered with Tatum Ridge, and we meet here every single weekend, and we try and support them in ways as much as we can and support the faculty and the staff and the administration. We love those guys. And so earlier this year, we got together and we said, hey, how can we help you? How can we continue to help you do what you do best? And so we started kicking that around and talking with another organization called Hope for Communities. And Hope for Communities is an organization based out of Bradenton, and we're going to be partnering with them this summer on July 20th because they do everything that they can to help students start school and continue in school in a way that provides dignity and self-respect for those students, for those families. And so what we're going to be doing is, I know that tomorrow is the first Monday of summer, but we're already talking about back to school, because here at Hope City Church, we have set a goal of sponsoring 75 kids who come from homes that are either low income, no income. They have some extenuating circumstances that have put them in a position of need. Maybe that's based upon jobs. Maybe that's based upon the fact that they have brought in other kids to their family through the foster care system. And there are any number of different reasons why people need help at the beginning of the school year. I mean, if you've got kids at all, you know what a process that is of getting your own kids ready for school. And so Hope for Communities has come along and they said, you know what, we can partner churches and schools and families together, put them in partnership with one another, and we can see some successful things happen. We can see kids, go to school with dignity and self-respect, and we can see their grades increase, their self-esteem increase, their morale increase. And so we started talking to the guidance counselor here and the principal, Barry Dunn, who is an incredible man. And we've gotten together and we've said, you know what, we can do this. In fact, there's a waiting list for this Day for Hope here at Tatum Ridge. And so we have said, you know what we can do? We can sponsor 75 kids to the tune of $100 per kid. And every kid that comes through, you know what they're going to do? They're going to receive a medical examination. They're going to receive an eye exam. They're going to get a haircut. They're going to get family pictures. They're going to get a school picture taken. They're going to get a hygiene kit. They're going to leave with everything that they need in order to start school successfully. They're going to get a $100 gift card to Old Navy, where they're going to be able to buy shoes and clothes for this next year. And they're going to leave with a brand new backpack loaded with school supplies and everything that they need here for Tatum Ridge. Guys, why are we doing this? Why am I even presenting this to you? Why am I encouraging you and inviting you to participate in sponsoring a student here at this school? Because this is our home. This is our people. This is the place that we call home. And we want to support and encourage them in any way that we can. We can't say that we're for Sarasota and then do nothing for Sarasota. We can't just kind of gather together on the weekends and yet not actually help our community in the name of Jesus. And this is one of those ways that we're able to do it. And as Ephesians says, we're going to do this in such a way that it builds other people up, doing what? Meeting their needs. Because who is very often the kid that gets gossiped about most? It's the kid that has the least. It's the kid that doesn't have the same opportunities as your kids do. When I was in 4th grade, do you remember the basketball sneakers with the pump in it? And you put your foot in, you pump it up. Well, I looked around the classroom. Everybody else had one of those. Not me. I didn't have that. We weren't able to have that. I just weren't able to afford it. If we could, I guess my parents were like, you got no game, pal. Like, you got no air. You don't need those shoes. And I know what it felt like, and I didn't grow up in a home in great need. And yet we have the opportunity to meet the needs, real needs, of kids who are growing up in a home today that can't provide, or circumstances have made it so that they cannot provide. See, like I said, we have a goal of $7,500 to make this happen. We've already, through the generosity of our Hope for All offering, we've been able to cover a portion of this. And every student that we sponsor is $100. And maybe you've got a kid and you're like, our family is going to sponsor one child. That would be incredible. Maybe you've got 3 kids and you say, I want to sponsor 3 kids that call Tatum Ridge home. Or maybe you've got 5 grandkids and you say, I want to give $500 to make a difference in the life of 5 kids that represent my grandkids. because I wouldn't want my grandkids to go to school without new shoes or without school supplies and a book bag. So why would I want another kid to do that? Guys, this isn't just a good thing. This isn't like a good thing to do. We believe this is a God thing, to get involved in our community, to get involved in supporting the very school that we love and we care about and we call home, the place that some of your own kids come to. And so I want to encourage you and invite you to pray about, like, what would God have you do in this opportunity, with this opportunity? And you know, if you give online, if you give through text messaging or a check, I want to ask you just to use the word legacy in this, because this is a legacy building moment that kids will forever look back and be like, you know, I was taken care of by some crazy church that we got book bags and all this stuff, and it made me feel when I started school. It's an incredible opportunity that we have. And so if you use texting to give, 84321, you can give any amount, but use the word legacy and then that amount. Or if you give online, the drop-down menu there, you can find the legacy fund and you can click that and give to that. See, together we're going to not only make a difference, but we want to leave a lasting legacy here in our city. In the lobby today, Jen Ruffin is our Reach Director, as well as Allison Roth. She's here visiting. We'd love for you to sign up and to serve. It's July 20th. It's going to be an incredible day to serve other people, to walk along with them and help them and serve their kids and just provide a great opportunity for them. So I want to invite you to sign up at the Next Steps booth today to serve on July 20th. You'll get an email about that as well. And yet there's one more aspect, as we think about curbing gossip, there's one more aspect that we have to talk about. For every person in this room, you know, it's one thing to protect your ears and filter your mouth, but there is another person that I need to talk to, and that's those of you who have been gossiped about. First off, I'm sorry. I know the pain that feels like to have others talking about you. It's hard to have your life be put on display and feel like everybody has the right to say whatever they want about it. And yet, Paul says this. He says in Ephesians chapter 4, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." Can I be bold enough to ask you to take Paul at his word, to take the gospel, to take the word of God at face value and say, you know what? If somebody has hurt your feelings, would you be brave enough to get rid of bitterness, rage, and anger and slander? Would you be brave enough to say, I'm gonna let that go? See, it's amazing what happens when you hold on to people's words. You bump into them in the hallway. You bump into them at the workplace, and all you can remember is not what they're saying right now, but what they said weeks ago or a month ago. And it's because we hold on to these things. It's easy to stay bitter. Bitterness and anger and unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't work like that, which is why you and we need to forgive from our heart. If we're truly going to defeat gossip, we have to forgive from our hearts. I know what I'm asking you to do. I know how challenging this is. You might be saying, but Peter, you have no idea what they've said or how it may have hurt my reputation or they've hurt my feelings. But I do know that if you hold on to it, you will never fully heal. You will never fully be able to move beyond the pain and the heartache and the grip that gossip can easily have in your life and in your world. In fact, the Apostle Paul, I love the words that he uses. He uses 4 words. He says, get rid of it. He's not even just saying, like, forget about it. No, he's like, get rid of it. Actively get this stuff out of your lives because there's no room for it here. Forgiving others, it doesn't release the memory of what they've done. Forgiving others says, I'm going to release you from the penalty of what you've done. I'm not going to hold you, I'm not going to hold on to that grievance anymore. I'm not going to hold that grudge anymore because it's too heavy for me to bear. Forgiveness, it's not keeping track of a score anymore. It's losing count. It's just saying, I'm not even going to think about it. You can't allow unforgiveness to exist in your world for one more day because it's too much. You can't fully heal until you fully let go. Every one of us in this room, we know that gossip is juicy and interesting. We know that. But I'm telling you, Paul's telling us, Solomon is telling us, that gossip only makes me look better by making somebody else feel worse. Gossip claims that I'm strong because you're weak. And yet the gospel invites us into something. It says, your weakness can be turned into strength because of who Jesus is. And so maybe people have been talking about you recently. Can I remind you that you're not weak? That in your weakness, that God has revealed his strength? Maybe we need to shift our focus to keep your focus on the cross. Maybe you've been tempted to be talking about other people. Can I invite you to shift your focus? Where instead of worrying about the welfare of another person, you're just getting up in their business. Gossip is incredibly challenging. But keep your focus on Christ. And it's amazing how our tongues will get in line when our heart is set on him.